on a journey of forgiveness. Louise and I had already completed a number of activities in Ottawa when in 2006 I felt a call to call First Nation leaders and Inuit leaders and Métis leaders, and we kept the door open to all people. And about 300 people showed up. And I didn't have an agenda. I didn't know what we were going to do. I heard the call to do this, and I did without knowing what we were getting into. And so we had no preset ideas of the outcome was going to be and how we were going to get the outcome. We were simply, let's gather together and, let's hear the Lord. And out of 3 days, we had an incredible time of worship and prayer and fellowship. And at the end of the 3 days came the covenant of the First Peoples of Canada. And it was a treaty among the First Nations and Inuit and Métis with one another, to love one another, to walk together, to forgive one another. And it was a journey of forgiveness. That's where journey of forgiveness began, was at that time on a regional, provincial, national level. And so 2 years later, the Prime Minister, Stephen Harper, apologized to our people for the Indian Residential School policies, and we were so excited. And I believe many First Nation peoples across Canada were excited to hear an apology, a recognition that this is what took place, and that the government was apologizing to us. We longed to hear that. What we did not want to hear and what we did not expect was the request from Stephen Harper for forgiveness. And that I believe that sent a shockwave right across Canada. Why would they ask for forgiveness? And why would we forgive? And so my wife and I prayed into this, and we began to see that the 2006 meeting, the first forgiveness had to be done by First Nation to First Nation, Inuit to Inuit, Métis to Métis, and then all of us collectively, we had to, reconcile with one another and reconcile with first, predominantly with God, for the way we had acted as a peoples and our failures as a peoples to be the stewards of this land, and failures to be the people that God had created us to be. And so we recognized and acknowledged that and took ownership that nothing was all well. Not everything was well. And that there were some things that we had to make right. And we did that. And so I think that foundational reconciliation and forgiveness had to be premised on the ownership of the original and host peoples of the land, to say we were wrong. In fact, before the white man came, before the churches were established, before settlers ever came on shore, what was life like? And so we talked about that, and we recognized that, hey, we messed up, and we had to take ownership of that root issue. And so that led, I think, it had to be established, that right foundation had to be established before the apology was given. And so when the apology was given, we're excited. The request for forgiveness, we're shocked. And no one did not want to forgive. And my wife and I sat and prayed for 2 more years after that. And we asked, we asked our people, why won't you forgive? And so I am a victim of Indian residential schools. I have gone through emotional abuse, spiritual abuse, physical, sexual abuse. I've gone through that like many other Indian residential school students and children. I came out of that because of my the love of my mother and my love for our way of life and people and faith in God. I was able to forgive. I was able to, as a victim, forgive those that hurt me and wounded me for so many years. And so my wife and I said, if we can forgive, that's where our healing comes from. And so we waited for the national chief and the grand chiefs to respond. Nobody did. And so I prayed one day, and my wife and I said, you know what? Let's just go across Canada and ask the people. Let's see who is willing to forgive. And so we went across Canada, from the east to the west and to the north, and as far south as we could go. We went and visited communities, and we just had heart-to-heart talks. At the end of that, we said, we are going to call a national gathering in Ottawa. We did not know what it was going to be called, but we said, hey, if you want to come, you're invited. And then the chiefs across Canada, when the news got a hold of what we were doing and that we had called for a national forgiven summit, then the reporters basically asked, basically wrote and said, Chief Kenny Blacksmith is going to release forgiveness. And then the chiefs and the leaders of the land across Canada said, you don't have a right to do that on our behalf. And so I ruffled a lot of feathers in those days, but I felt that we were on the right journey. And so one day my wife said, how are you going to respond to all that? And I said, no, I'm just going to pray. And so the response that the Lord gave me was, forgiveness cannot be bought, sold, or traded. Forgiveness cannot be achieved politically. Forgiveness cannot be achieved through legal means, recourses. So forgiveness is spiritual. It has to be done by an individual who's ready to forgive. So I said, the National Forgiven Summit is a call to a coalition of individuals who are ready to release forgiveness. And that's how it happened.
So in other words, rather than saying that Chief Kenny Blacksmith was releasing forgiveness, it was a bunch of people individually releasing forgiveness through that summit.
Yes. I was surprised.
Why do you suppose there was so much, and I know this is quite a long time ago now, but why do you suppose there was so much opposition to forgiveness?
Well, there was so much wounding. There was so much anger. There's a persistent expression from the government not honoring the treaty relationships, the conditions in the communities. We're still wards of the crown. We still don't have a real say in who we are. The government holds everything, all control pretty much over us. Even though there's modern day treaties right now that supposedly are premised on nation to nation, relationships, sovereign nations within a nation, basically, we still did not have a complete freedom to be who we are as a people. And so I think, and because the church ran with the assimilation policies of the government. The church was supposedly giving us a message of love and hope in God, and at the same time, we were experiencing real in some cases, life-threatening, experiences. And so there was so much distrust. We didn't believe in the government. We didn't believe in the church. And because of that, we continue to just, go on our life's journey without real hope, without real freedom from a negative past. And so I think that's why our people did not want to release forgiveness.
That's a lot to forgive.
And on top of that, people were using that as a political tool or legal tool to, either increase or decrease accountability, responsibilities. But we weren't there. We were looking more of our own individual lives. 5,000 people came together. And I think we had 7,000 people streaming, live streaming into the event at that time. Wow. And so it created an image of a handful of people that were willing to forgive. And it was just like a rock or a pebble being thrown into the lake of our nation. And it had ripple effects, not just in Canada, but in US and around the world. From then on, I received a lot of invitations internationally to come and tell the story. Even today, as we speak, New Zealand and Australia are on a journey of forgiveness. And they're asking, they're asking me to tell the story of forgiveness in Canada. Did we do the right thing? I think so. Did it do what it was meant to do? I believe everything that we do in God is a journey. It's only a part of it. We see in part, we know in part. Somebody else will come along and move along whatever needs to be done. But I think God brought us to that day and opened the door. And that door is still open to hope, to healing, to freedom. And as long as people see the possibilities of what the power of forgiveness can do, I think we still have a chance to do greater things, to achieve greater healing, greater freedom from a negative past. And I think the days are coming when we can rightfully, in a good way, with healed minds and healed spirits, to be able to take ownership of our future and be able to say we can do things for ourselves. That's what I think the power of forgiveness can do.